This next lesson deals with scientific notation and corresponds with the worksheet that says significant figures, scientific notation, and metric conversion homework. And this deals with numbers 1, A through C, and 2, A and B. Scientific notation is basically a shorthand way of writing extremely big numbers or extremely small numbers. So if you notice, I have this number 300 million right here in the middle, and that's a pretty long number to write. It's not the longest number, but it's pretty good size. And I don't want to have to write all those zeros all the time. So I'm going to follow these 3 steps up here and show you how we could put this in scientific notation. And each step corresponds with the one below it. So for instance, this would be step 1, and this would be step 2, and step 3, and so forth. So I'm going to do first step, which says move the decimal right or left, and then rewrite the number as a number between 1 and 10. Well, the decimal is sort of hidden here because it's actually right here, isn't it? So I'm going to move that decimal all the way over beyond between the 3 and the first 0. So that means I'm going to write it like this, 3.0. And that is a number, 3.0 is a number between 1 and 10. Then I do the second step. I put times 10. So that's where I got this step right here. This is step number 2. This is 1, that's 2. Then I'm going to do step number 3. Step number 3 says to write an exponent behind the 10 that's equal to the number of places that I moved it. Well, if you look at how many places I moved it here, I moved that decimal place, well, here was 3, then I moved it another 3, which was 6, and then I moved it another 2, which was 8. So that's 3 times 10 to the 8th. And that's where I get the, in this case, the speed of light would be 3 times 10 to the 8th meters per second. Okay. Now I can also look at the exponent here, and since this number originally was much greater than 1, that means that this is going to be a positive 8, not a negative 8. So that's 3 times 10 to the positive 8th meters per second. Well, let's say if you have a really small number. Well, really small numbers that work sort of backwards from this step here. So I'm going to, I shouldn't say backwards, it's just sort of in a negative direction. So let's start off with a really small number now, 0.0000003. So I got 7 zeros and then a 3. Well, let's do these same steps just with a small number. I'm going to move the decimal right or left and rewrite the number as a number between 1 and 3. So I'm going to move the decimal all the way over beyond the 3. So now it's 3 point something, because 3 is between 1 and 10. Now I do the second step. I'm going to put times 10 to the. The third step is to write an exponent of the number of places you moved it. Well, I moved it. Here's 3, then another 3, then another 2, which was 8. So if you notice, it's the same number here, almost. But let's look at this very, very, very first, oh, that was good, Jeff. Let's look at this very, very, very first number that I wrote down, 0.0000003. If you notice, that was much, much, much smaller than the number 1. And right here it says, if the number is lower than 1, you must make the exponent negative. So it's not 3 times 10 to the 8th, it's 3 times 10 to the negative 8th. So really small numbers have negative exponents, really big numbers have positive exponents. Now there is a way to cheat legally if you forget all these rules, and that's to use your TI calculator. Let me show you how to do this here. If I want to take a great big number and turn it into scientific notation, first of all, you learn how to turn on your calculator. Hello? Please turn on calculator. There we go. So if I'm going to type in 3 and then 8 zeros, right? That's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What I can do is I can come up to the mode button, press the mode button, and if you notice, I have it in scientific notation here. So if I hit enter, hit science and clear that out. If I hit enter, it will put it in scientific notation for me. Now this scientific notation on the calculator looks a little bit different than what we're used to, because it has an E here. What that E means, if you look down at the bottom of your notes, it means times 10 to the. So this means 3 times 10 to the 8th. Times 10 to the is actually an old Indian term. I think he was married to Pocahontas, if I'm not mistaken. So that means 3 times 10 to the 8th. Now you can also go backwards. If I put in 3 second EE, now remember that means times 10 to the 8th, I can have the calculator put it in normal notation. So I go up to mode, and I say, I want you to put that in normal notation for me. So we're going to clear that out, hit enter, and now it puts it back as a normal number. Now, how to do that is actually pretty easy, so we can also do that by hand if you want. So if we start it as 3 times 10 to the 4th, this is not a number that you would actually ever write in scientific notation because it's so small. But let's look at what we do. I'm now going to write down the number, but I'm now going to move the decimal the same number of places as the exponent. So if the decimal is here, I'm going to move it one place, which means I'd have to add a 0. At another place, which means I'd have to add a 0. Another place, which means I'd have to add a 0. And another place, which means I have to add a 0. So 3 times 10 to the 4th is the same thing as 30,000. Now what if this number here was negative? Let's say it was 3 times 10 to the negative 4th. Well, that means your number is going to be less than 1. So I'm going to start off with 3. But this time, I have to move the decimal so it's less than 1. So I'm going to go 0.3 would be 1 spot. 0.03 would be 2 spots, 0.003 would be 3 spots, and 0.0003 would be 4 spots. So 3 times 10 to the negative 4th is equal to 0.0003.